Welcome back to another episode of Side Note, the podcast dedicated to underground electronic dance music and all things related. We've got a dog chilling here. As always, I am your host, Nick, and with me this week, we have techno DJ extraordinaire, Realize. Welcome, man.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming. So as I like to start off every show, I like to kind of ask my guests what their most recent kind of gig was and to kind of set the scene.
Sure. Last weekend, I played silent disco at the Wisdom in downtown LA.
Okay.
It's a immersive art music experience. So there's a few domes set up and 3D sort of trippy art in each of the domes. And then you can pick up some headphones at the silent disco station, listen to a few DJs, whichever one's your style, and then just walk around and take it all in.
Oh, so they have multiple DJs at the same time, and you just pick whichever headphone vibes with you. That's pretty cool. And shout out to the Wisdom. It's essentially like a psychedelic museum. Yeah, I feel like, and it's like they took a small slice of Burning Man and dropped it in the downtown arts district. It's amazing. If you haven't been, please go. I feel like what they're doing is incredible.
Very unique thing to just throw into the middle of LA for people to.
It's really the first time I went, I was just so overwhelmed at not only how cool it was, but sort of overjoyed that it exists, here in LA. Because for me, as someone who's very much a psychedelic proponent, shout out to psychedelics.
Shout out to Maps.
Yeah, shout out to Maps and Rick Doblin. Someone who's such a strong proponent of it, to kind of see it enter the mainstream in LA in such a big way, right? It's a big kind of property, right in the heart of where a lot of cool shit is happening.
All ages.
Yeah.
Start them young.
Yeah, it's amazing. So they used to do the Samskara. Did you ever see that exhibit there?
No. Okay. Oh, Samskara. I've heard of it. I saw kind of
Yeah, it was like Android Jones, who's a visionary artist. It was his art installation that he used to tour around. Maybe he still does. I'm sure there's people who've seen it at Burning Man. So they recreated it in LA. And then I think just before COVID, they replaced it with a different exhibit called Mystic Universe. As you can see, I'm very well versed in the Wisdom. Mystic Universe, if Wisdom people, if you're out there, not quite as good as Samskara, but I heard they're rebuilding it as something else. So interesting, the whole party that you did. So how did it work? Where were the DJs situated?
This was my second time playing. The first time was out in the grass area, so it wasn't as integrated. But this time we were set up inside one of the domes, and the visuals were right over the DJ booth, so you could come kind of close to the DJs. And it was a kind of a storytelling film that they had put on. So you could see the start of the story and then the middle of the end as you as the DJs progressed throughout the night.
Awesome. I think so. Because it was silent, were you able to go later? Because I feel usually they shut down around midnight because the proximity to condos and stuff.
Yeah, it went till I think 1:30. Okay. And they also had live or speakers set up in one of the other domes, so you could go and dance to non-silent disco.
Got it. Yeah. And then how were you connected to this party?
Someone reached out to me, a mutual friend that I had met through just going out to parties. Okay. And then they said, hey, do you want to be on? They put me on, and then one of the other channels was playing a really well put together set between the whole night. So one DJ would get on and then the next DJ would go on. They just flow into each other kind of magically. And then I ended up connecting with them after and found out they were kind of a clique of people. Okay. And I kept in touch with them, and then they reached out to me a few weeks before last weekend and said, hey, we'd like you to join us because we think you're a good fit. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It's all about the networking.
Yeah.
I feel it all starts with just showing up to party. Which sounds easy, right? All you got to do is show up to the parties and make friends and stuff kind of congeals for you. But I feel going to the parties is kind of hard work.
Yeah.
If you're doing it more than, a couple times a month, right?
It can take energy depending on like your introversion.
Yeah, exactly. Too. I was going to say your disposition too, right? Like I am 100% an introvert. And I think the difference, people talk about, I don't think the difference is whether or not you can go out and socialize. I think introverts and extroverts are able to do so effectively. I think the difference is for an extrovert, it's energy giving. So going out and like socializing with people like charges extroverts, whereas for introverts, it sucks up energy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's definitely where I'm at, where it's like, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good. I can go out and like talk to people, but it's like so energy.
Yeah, I feel the same, maybe like a little switched around. Like it's easy for me to get there, but then to engage with people isn't always the easiest. Sometimes it's challenging, and I'm like, oh, that's someone I've been meaning to talk to. And I kind of have to like do some pep talk and be like, right. Just approach the person, especially like let's say in a warehouse setting, it's hard to like engage with people with like the loud music. But I'll just be like, hey, I think I'm going to regret it more if I go home and, don't say hello to new people.
That's the thing that's so difficult too about engaging with people at parties is it's so fucking loud that you're like, how do I, like, you're just like, hey, and then people talk and then you just nod and you just hope that they didn't ask you a question. Like, they're like, burp, 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 and you're like,
exactly.
And then sometimes I'll be like, sorry.
I think that's why it's important to like break the night up and go out to like the smoking area and just, that's probably where the connections happen.
That's the thing. Like, so yeah, I used to be like major cigarette smoker, and that's where I would get all of my like connection and networking, just heading out, go for a cig, come back in. But now that I don't do that, it's harder to do. And then like going out to the smoking area just to be like, hey guys, like, who wants to talk to me? A little more difficult. But yeah, such are the nuances of party, I guess.
Yeah.
So, one thing I was super excited about, and well, let me take a step back. Let me just say, we're both wearing our Sasha and Digweed merch. You've got the Ground Under Bedrock Records t-shirt. Mm-hmm. I'm rocking my Sasha Last Night on Earth in tribute to Shoutout there. So it wouldn't be a party, it wouldn't be a side note if I didn't mention Sasha and Digweed. Today I'm mentioning them, and they're playing tonight, so very exciting occasion. Looking forward to seeing the man-like Son of God and the Wizard himself. So it will have already taken place by the time this airs, but if anyone has a time machine after they see this, step into the portal and go check out Sasha and Digweed. Tonight for Factory 93. But I was going to mention that sort of in the context of, the conversation about introversion, right? So I don't know if you know Jay Woo or if you saw the episode.
I saw that one.
But when he was on, we kind of, dissected kind of our introversion in the context of kind of a love for very like heady, intellectual, like progressive house music. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Given that I think we're both sort of agreeing that we're introverts and we're both wearing the Sasha and Digweed merch.
Yeah, I think that I definitely, whatever Jay Woo said resonated with me on that episode about how like...
And shout out to Jay Woo.
Shout out. It was very, like when you go out and listen to it, there's certain styles that you like really resonate with, and lately I've been into like that kind of deeper techno sort of ethereal vibe.
Yeah.
And it just puts me in like the right headspace that I like to be in. And I've spoken with other people who prefer like the 140, 145 BPM stuff, and they're like, you know what, I always have racing thoughts, and that kind of levels me out. And so I definitely think that's my vibe with the cerebral stuff. So
a good segue into, I listened through to some of your productions and your mixes, and I definitely vibe. There's a progressive sensibility in there. What I also appreciate though is that it's an updated progressive sensibility. So it's techno, right? I think on the surface, anyone who would listen to one of your mixes would just be like, this is techno. But there is that kind of progressive vibe that I feel like I could detect kind of running through, which I really appreciate. Because although techno I feel like it's bigger than it's ever been in 2022. It's a particular vibe of techno, right? It's like the 140 BPM, just like smash you on the head with beats, which no disrespect, right? Awesome. Like I've definitely enjoyed and experienced that. I've played it myself, right, at that kind of tempo. But it's a different experience when it's kind of like the slow burn kind of journey. And I definitely feel like I could vibe that coming through with your music.
Yeah. That's kind of like the vibe that I go for is be within like the realm of techno, but have elements of progressive music to it. Like you, Sasha and Digweed are like biggest my biggest
the North
influences.
Star, the North Star.
Yeah, and I could speak from seeing Digweed. Like he has a pretty versatile, like DJ crate. I'd say like he can kind of do techno, house, progressive. So that's kind of where I've got that influence from, is kind of just dropping elements of progressive music into like a techno set.
Right. What's funny now, in 2022, like the concept of progressive house is kind of ill-defined, right? Like if you came up in like the 90s, 2000s, I think you have a very clear idea of what progressive means to you based on kind of Sasha and Digweed and Global Underground and all of that stuff. But in 2022, it's lost its meaning, right? Because it can also mean, does it mean All Day I Dream? Does it mean Nick Warren's The Soundgarden? Does it mean Sasha and Digweed? Does it mean what you're playing, right? Which is techno, but still has kind of that journey vibe to it. Or, like, who did 6 a.m. bring in recently that I really liked? Claudio PRC.
Oh, right.
An Artifact is another. Some people would just call that techno. But I hear that, I'm like, dude, you're playing progressive, dude. Like, so it's funny how like the label has lost a little bit of its meaning, but it's like when you and I talk about it, like we both know what we're talking about, which is interesting.
I think, and if you go on Beatport, the progressive house genre has kind of been hijacked to mean 100%. Like a more like commercial sounding house. Yeah,
so like, I have like of younger siblings who rave and stuff, and they're like, oh, what kind of stuff do you play? Like, what do you like? And shout out to Mark and Jasmine, who were actually on the show. And I'm like, oh, I like progressive sound. Like that has no meaning to them. So the only way I could describe it, I was like, well, the shit I like occupies the space between house and techno, but it's not tech house that And I remember like we were hanging out the last time we were here, and I was like playing that stuff. And it was funny to see like my little brother kind of like scratching his chin. He's like, it is the space between house and techno that's not tech house. Like, he was like, unbelievable. And it's like, yes, it's progressive, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell me about kind of how your introduction to DJing and like that journey, your superhero story.
All right. So when I graduated high school, I had really no exposure to electronic music.
Okay, and where'd you grow up? Are you from SoCal? Or?
Yeah. I lived in like Glendale and Burbank for my early years. Yeah.
Okay. Are you Armenian? Is that okay for me to ask?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm Armenian. I graduated Burbank High and then kind of just joined a group of friends who were really into electronic music. At the end of that year, graduation year, I went to Together as One, 2009, 2010.
Okay. I think I was at 2010. Okay, but go on.
I kind of had to just listen to artists to see like what I would like, but I was kind of guided by my friends as well and their taste, and they were more on like the trance side, progressive house, whatever that meant at that time.
Right.
Had like the typical first rave experience, saw Cascade at midnight, and kind of just was more like a wandering rave experience, like walk around, meeting people, taking it all in. And I think actually, I think Digweed played that year, but I didn't even know about him. So it's just kind of like a missed connection. And then
I think both of them played together that year, no?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
But sorry, I digress.
And then for the next year or so, I was kind of trying out different events. Maybe like that March was the first Beyond Wonderland.
Okay.
And so I got exposure to like Sander Van Doorn playing like his Purple Haze music, Groove Armada. And I think the following year was the first year that Insomniac did techno at like the NOS Center, and they had brought Richie Houghton and and a bunch of artists.
Okay.
And that was probably when I first started getting into techno. And soon after, just seeing, you know, having these experiences where people just show you this music that you've never heard before, I was like, I want to be doing that. And so got into DJing, and shortly after production, and here we are.
Okay. So going back to kind of the origin story, you know, typical rave experience, so that I would imagine that to mean that included some kind of like MDMA type experience. You know, and I feel like I glaze over this a lot with like my guests, but you know, I feel like I've also said before where I feel like rave it's unique in that it is truly 50% kind of driven by the music and the love of music, and also 50% driven by substance. It's like a yin and yang situation.
Of course.
So for you, what was like kind of the chemical side of it like, and what was your experience kind of intro? Because like for me, like I remember I was 17 the first time I did it. Like my friend and I, we both lied to our parents so that we could like not be at home, and then like drove with his like learner's permit, illegally drove to like Pomona. I ended up taking more than I should have, but having like a time of my life. And I remember for me, it was like I was like 17 and I was like angsty teenager. Like it was the first time in my life since being a child where I actually felt sort of like carefree and kind of like the weight of, you know, existence had kind of been lifted. And then married that to music. It's like, yeah, like, you know, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you?
Yeah, well, as I said, I had little exposure to the music. So I think that combined experience of the substance and the music, if that had not come together like that, I might not have even liked the music.
And so you were here in Cascade, like, so yeah, what were the standout kind of music experiences combined with the substance, like that first
yeah
rave?
Well, that was when his collaboration with Deadmau5, the I Remember track was very popular.
Oh yes.
And that was like my like, okay, it's kicking in, and then hearing that track.
Holy shit.
And it's like, so I have like a little like souvenir track whenever I listen to it. It kind of brings back those memories. And it's like just the voice singing directly to you.
Because that is like such an iconic track, and see, I'm glad I probed on this, and for that to kind of be one of the kind of your standout memories from like a first rave, like, man, like, see, now I can imagine like what that was like, and like, because you're at Together as One, it's like Cascade, that track, most people have heard it, but if you haven't, go pause this and go look it up on YouTube right now. Okay, sorry. So
yeah, and like just once the chemicals like in your brain start kicking in, and you just kind of, the whole room shifts, and like the lighting looks different, and the way people's energy is just radiating, and it just makes you feel, or made me feel like very good just to be nice to people. Mm-hmm. And I tried to like integrate that experience into my life, like after the rave, and just be like, let me try and be as nice as I can to people off of it, because I feel like it can bring me a little closer to that experience, and it's like a great takeaway from it.
Oh man, like you're stealing the words out of my mouth. I mean, I remember that, having that same experience exactly. Before rave, like in high school, I was kind of a nerd, like not that popular. And then within my friend group, I feel like I was kind of known for just being cranky and like a hater, just like sipping the haterade. Like people would joke like, there's nothing that you can't make sound stupid. Oh, look at the cute baby, And I remember like coming back from this experience at a rave, and 100%, it was like I felt like I wanted to be a different person. Like I like the new goal post or the new goal was to kind of be as loving and as nice of a person as possible, precisely to kind of recreate that experience in my everyday life, the integration. It's hard to do, right? Because you have the experience and then weeks, months pass and the bullshit comes back again. I was listening to like Rogan podcast one time and he said that psychedelics in general, it's like when you clean your desktop, then over time the icons start piling up again. Yeah. And then you need to kind of like do another reset. So that was certainly my experience. But what has yours been, or what was yours kind of coming out of that first Together as One?
It just really like skyrocketed my life in a different direction, and just like I was like, okay, I needed some kind of outlet, and I think it's like the music. And so I spent like the rest of the years until now just being a part of the scene, exploring different styles of music, meeting people, just moving it forward, keeping it going.
Right. So I guess, as a performer / DJ, do you find that you're kind of actively trying to like push your career, or is it more kind of organic from knowing people? Like what has your experience been with that?
I think it's a mix of both. It's like being in the right places at the right time with the right set of mind as well. Like opportunities will present themselves. You'll like maybe meet like a promoter, and you have to be able to say the right things, and have whatever it is like ready to like kind of, I guess, market yourself if the opportunity presents itself. So a lot of it is unfortunately spending time on social media, which I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword. Now it's like, your career or passions are in your hands instead of like people in suits, but then the responsibility and pressure also falls on you to kind of maintain the content and all that.
Yeah, which is hard.
But I think it's just a matter of showing up with like the right mindset that, it's not just about me, it's about a whole community, and seeing like if and how you fit into that community. And that's that, along with like balancing self-care, because it can be very taxing if you're just 100%, without taking any breaks at all.
Yeah. I feel like 6 a.m. is really good about like promoting that message of like balance and self-care in their social media. And for the most part, I feel like a lot of the guests who have come through here, try to keep that front and center. But like certainly the scene in general, it's sort of like we're all sort of flirting with disaster, right? Because like if it's, I feel like it's such a fine line between like, doing it in a healthy, intentional way versus kind of losing control and, it becoming a little more like sad. Thankfully, like in terms of my friends, I haven't seen that much of it, but secondhand, like friends of friends, certainly, it's easy to kind of, you lose that self-care and it just becomes, I don't want to say addiction, but it just becomes a little all-consuming, right? In terms of like, this is all I'm doing all the time.
I think like that hustle culture kind of sets in, and it's something that should definitely be like moderated or checked as like an artist.
Yeah. When Ray Cash was on, shout out to Ray Cash, like we had a really good discussion around, because he's in it. Like before he moved to Barcelona, I think he was one of LA's like most prolific DJs. You know, he had his like Temple Tuesday night, and then I, you know, see him all around Resident Sound. And yeah, he pointed out that a lot of the times it's mainly just kind of mental health, you know, like being able to self-care and to take care of yourself in a way that allows you to enjoy the things that you want to enjoy in a healthy, intentional way, which can get lost when you're hustling, you know, to be the next DJ, or, you know, you're just partying without any real intention, you know, like going out every weekend. I forgot what Gia said, something like, a lot of you are depressed, but yet I see you at my parties like every week. Like, so what exactly are you celebrating? Which is like a little bit trigger warning, but you know, it's true. So I guess, you know, you've been around in the scene since 2010, and then it's been 12 years. Yeah. I guess when did it kind of transition from consuming to creating for you?
Probably, I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, I had to step away, and there were a lot of events that I was going to, and I would go and then have, you know, the joy of being there, but also a little bit of regret of, you know, if I want to be up there, then I can't be going to as many events. Like I could sure go, you know, every once in a while. Yeah. And just focusing on my art and craft versus partying most of the time. And that's part of it. And then I was also neglecting social media for a while because I just didn't accept that it was like a necessary evil of being in the industry. So maybe the last 1 or 2 years I've been studying and seeing like what is it that other people do, and what is it that I can do that can work for myself in a healthy manner that I can sustain long term, because this is an industry where things don't happen overnight. You have to be in it for the long game.
Yeah, so in the pie chart of sort of where you're allocating your time and energy, how would you say it breaks down between social media, production, DJing, networking, et cetera, marketing?
Yeah, I'd say maybe like a quarter of it would be networking, a quarter of it would be social media, a quarter of it is production, and the other quarter would probably just be like the DJing part of it.
Okay, actually like going out and... Yeah. And then, so I saw that like, I've seen you gig regularly, I feel like, pretty regularly. I've seen you on lineups out of town as well, right?
Yeah, I played in San Diego earlier this year for Fingers Crossed had like their opening party at Spin in San Diego. I played with alongside Waracles, and so I did the opening set, and he was set to do the headlining set, and then I just reached out to the promoters and was like, hey, I'm gonna stick around, so if you want me to do the closing set as well, like I'm there, and it ended up working out. Sick. So whoever stuck around for most of the night kind of just saw me do like, you know, the usual warm-up set, setting the night for the main act, and then after he got off, kind of just popped back on and was able to like bang it out for the rest of the night. Okay.
And in terms of, I mean, you don't have to give numbers, but like economics wise, like do you have to negotiate a lot, or is it typically just like this is the rate?
I would not say I'm in a position to negotiate right now. I just don't have like the following or position in the industry. So it's more just picking the gigs where I'm okay, or accepting the gigs where I'm okay with the pay that they're offering.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about, you know, parties that have inspired you. Like, what are some of the kind of standout events, parties, festivals, raves, etc.?
Sure. I'd say lately, the Reform has really taken it. Like
really? Okay. Yeah. Were you at the Danny Tenaglia, Josh Wink one?
Yes.
Okay, cool, cool.
It's just really, I think, taking things to the next level. And for me, despite being in like the LA music scene for like the last decade or so, it was one of the last times where I remember where it had like a community sense where, you know, a lot of people came out and supported the scene, and it was also like a pretty huge production with like 5 or 6 stages plus like the after party. And it had something for everyone. So if you wanted more of the ambient side, you could go to that room. If you wanted just an underground or more well-known experience, there was something for everyone. I'd say that I've always enjoyed going to like the underground parties through Incognito, Dirty Epic, 6 a.m. I was going to Exchange for a while when they had more of like the underground artists, I'd say, like Digweed would play there.
Yeah, Digweed used to play there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of phased out of that now. I've also had the opportunity to check out clubs in some other states and countries. Maybe a couple months ago, I went to the Basement in New York.
Okay.
And that was
in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was on my map for a while because I feel like it's one of the most well-known techno clubs in the States. And that was a really cool experience. Kind of Berghain-esque, like no pictures inside. And
who was headlining? Do you remember?
Boris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Berghain Boris.
Yeah.
Or not, because there's New York Boris too.
Yeah, there's New York Boris too.
But this was Berghain Boris. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, New York, like LA, has had kind of a rave renaissance. I never got to go to Output. Did you ever do that one?
No.
Famous Output, which is now like a wedding space. Sad face. I'm sorry, go on. So other parties that kind of blew you away.
Yeah, so I also have been to Amsterdam and Berlin. So
okay, did you go to Berghain?
Yes.
Shit. Yeah. Okay, tell all.
Okay, I've been there maybe 5 or 6 times over the past few years.
Whoa! And you got in every time?
No, I didn't. I didn't get in most of the time.
Okay.
I'd just say most of the times getting in, from my experience, has been like having a connection. Or getting lucky at the door.
Okay. Did you actually see Sven?
I've seen him a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah. Even when like you walk past through the guest list side, there's still a little bit of anxiety.
Oh, so there is a guest list. It's not everyone is subject to the whims of Sven.
No, there is a guest list.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just. Trying to see what translates well to telling it into a story. I mean, yeah, it's like obviously the most well-known techno club in the world.
We'll start with how long did you wait in line? Or on average, right? Because you've been a few times.
Yeah, average I'd say 1-2 hours.
Okay.
The longest I waited in line was the last time I went. I had guest list the first day.
Okay.
We went back the second day. Okay. So we're supposed to be a very smooth experience going back because you have a guest list. You were in the party the other day. We waited in line for 4 hours to get back in.
Fuck. Okay. And then the first time you got in, like, what's the move in terms of when to arrive, right? Because I heard the move is show up Sunday morning.
Yeah. I mean, you show up Sunday morning. I'd say honestly, just show up Saturday morning.
Okay. So like wake up, do your yoga, get brunch, and then head over to Berghain. Like, can you do that? Because the party's still going, right? Isn't it going?
Yeah, it goes, yeah, usually about like 36 hours. Fuck. So I'd say like it's about to turn midnight on Saturday. Go give it one shot. If you don't make it in, try again like 8 hours later when the bouncers switch. Okay. And maybe you'll get lucky.
It's the tricks of the trade. It's the tricks of the trade.
And then if you get unlucky again, try again like 16-ish hours later.
And so if you show up in the daytime, like are there still a ton of people waiting to get in, or is it more like an empty after party vibe?
From what I've seen, usually in the daytime, it's kind of dead. Now it's up in the air because they just reopened like a month or two ago. Okay. But yeah, in the daytime, that's probably a good time to go if you just want to see really quickly if you're going to get in or not. Just pull the Band-Aid off.
Got it. Okay. And then inside, like what wildness awaits? Like, because so I guess I'm not super clear. Does the whole thing double as a gay club, or is it only the basement club that is also a gay club?
I'd say, I mean, it's a predominantly like a gay population or audience. There is like the laboratory, which is basically men only, so they get to have their fun there. And but otherwise, it's.
And is stuff isolated to, say, dark rooms, or you're on the main dance floor seeing something and there's sort of debauchery everywhere? Like what's the scene like?
Debauchery is probably just off in the outskirts. I can't tell you from my experience about dark rooms. So, right. But yeah, there's like the main floor of Berghain where like pounding techno is. If you want to take a breather, you go upstairs, or maybe not even taking a breather. Maybe if it's just your vibe is housey music, you go upstairs to Panorama Bar.
Okay, but it's not like everywhere you turn, there's like orgy happening, you know? Because like I haven't been, right, and then all I know is like the reputation, and then I think I've mentioned on here before. There's that meme that went around like a few years ago that it's clearly fake, but it was like written from the perspective of an American tourist like going to Berghain for the first time, like golly gee, and you know it's like hilarious. But I'm like, is it really like that, or you know?
Maybe on some of the nights.
Okay. And then I guess lastly, like, did it live up to the hype, the expectation, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like it like surpassed my expectations.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, just, you know, most DJs play a 4-hour set, so like you get to really like learn who they are and what kind of like influences they have. The vibe is just amazing. Like people are just like at like their best pretty much. People are glowing.
So like the plur is like
the plur. Real? Yeah, it's I'd say it's like a very like older, mature plur, you know, because like the audience tends to be like
skews older.
Yeah, I'd say like late 20s, early 30s, maybe even maybe a little older than that.
Late 20s, early 30s is older.
Well, compared to, you know, like Insomniac, you know, raves and whatnot.
So like, yeah, it can be hard for me to reconcile plur generally with 140 BPM techno, because it doesn't seem like they would gel, but they do. I mean, and I seen it, you know, at 6 a.m.
Yeah, totally.
And in other techno parties, but it's like you wouldn't think, right? Because like for me, when I think about plur, it's like either house vibes or like EDC vibe, like Candy Kid, and then you think of like kind of techno. It's just like angry goth people, but that's not the case.
No, I'd say it's just more of like a serious vibe because of that music, of like the energy that it puts out, but that there is like that plur element kind of to it.
And like, what is the dress code, or like what is like the vibe of people? Like, is it all black, like memes and shit, where it's like, yeah, this is Berlin.
You know, going in, 90% of people will wear black. Maybe like if they're like a regular, then they don't really have to put on the outfit. And then the key is that you change outfits once you go in, because you don't want to like look like you're trying too hard in the line. And so if you're into like the, you know, leather and
wait, so did you dress up? Once you dress further up when you get in, you mean? Like
you dress, you kind of just wear like, you know, cover yourself or whatever, just wear casual clothes, and then on the way in you can dress down.
Okay. So you're playing it up for the line and then like going more chill inside, or vice versa? Sorry.
You're playing just kind of casual in line, and then when you go in, if you wear like the other sort of stuff, like, you know, just trying to think like fashion-y sort of stuff, or
that's no go for
or leather line. Yeah, it's no go for the line. You should just wear like a coat over it or something, or take a backpack on your way in and change inside.
Interesting. So it's like a don't be cool kind of vibe. Okay, so Berghain lives up to the hype, but don't be too cool for the line. So then people, once they make it past the line, like what kind of dressing up further? Like, can you put on a multicolored shirt after you've like made it through wearing black? Does anyone do that?
After you get in, anything goes, really. Like you can dress as much as you want or as little as you want.
But if I'm in line, like looking like I'm ready to go to Desert Hearts with like multicolored psychedelic etceteras, no, Sven's not going to let it fly.
Not today.
Interesting.
Unless you're a regular, then, you know.
Man, but so like, what vibe are they going for? Everyone just needs to be like dressed down and in black.
I think, that's just so that people who happen to like stumble into the line and don't know where they are,
I see,
don't get in.
They're trying to make sure that everyone who's there knows what Berghain is. And because I was told that if you know who's playing, it can be enough to like move the needle for you. Because they'll ask you like, who's playing tonight? And if you're like Boris and Marcel Deadman, booyah, then they'll be like, okay, fine.
If they give you the opportunity to name some artists, usually it's just not today.
Oh, really? Yeah. So they'll just look at you and give you the not today.
They'll look at you, and sometimes they'll look, and before you can even step up to the line, they'll already give you the not today. Or sometimes you'll stand there for like 15, 30 seconds, and you get the eyes on you, and they're like, no.
Oh, man. See, so like everyone hypes it up at how like amazing it is, right? But when I hear about the entry process, I don't know, like it's kind of a turnoff. But maybe that's part of the yin and yang of it, right?
Yeah, once you get in and you have the experience, if it was the right experience for you, it'll make more sense.
Okay.
Part of it is not everyone can be inside, so you have to let the people in. Like if they just let a bunch of tourists inside, that vibe that is usually in the club won't be there. So you need regulars to kind of carry the vibe throughout the months.
Got it.
And it is sort of reminiscent to our earlier point of it was me having that first rave experience, but in a different form. It was like just being older, more mature.
Like 2.0, yeah.
Yeah, 2.0.
Okay. I still need to get it done. As I've mentioned, I've only ever really like gone raving and partying in France. Actually, that's the only part of Europe I've ever really seen. So want to get it done.
We'll talk secrets after.
Yeah. Trying to like, where would you recommend is a good starting point? You know, because like I get paralyzed when I weigh my options for like, okay, all I know is I want to go partying in Europe, and then it's like, but I could go to Ibiza. I can go to, Mallorca. I could do the UK thing and do like the fabric.
Yeah, fabric ministry. So.
Or I can go to Berlin. Like I get paralyzed at trying to figure out where to even start. Like, what would your recommendation be?
From my experience, like Amsterdam and Berlin were a good starting points. And one of the things about like going to Berlin is that it has something I think we're kind of moving towards here in LA, but not quite yet. Is that techno is really a part of like the culture. Like you could probably just walk and say the word techno out loud and people will like know.
Your ears burn whenever someone says techno.
Yeah, just imagine being somewhere where they're advertising, artists that would be considered underground here. You could see a bunch of posters everywhere and billboards and like, so it's much more integrated into like the lifestyle over there.
Yeah, I have heard that it's like techno church, right? Everyone's part of the techno church in Berlin, which is super cool. So that would be like your first stop.
Yeah,
or Amsterdam.
Okay. And there's no shortage of venues there because like, here the way we do it is a warehouse because of last call and, there's no real support for people to do those parties and come close to breaking even financially. But over there, I've never been to a warehouse event in Berlin. It's all clubs.
Okay.
Yeah. So
did you make it over to like Trezor or any of the other ones? Okay.
I did go into. I've been to Trezor a couple times.
Okay.
I think
Watergate.
I've been to Watergate too.
Okay.
Trezor's more lax with the door policy, and it's really cool being inside too. It's just you just feel like techno's been like living and breathing here for the last who knows how many decades.
Okay.
And Watergate, I'd compare to. It's probably like going to like Avalon, it's like.
Wait, so are there Asian washers there?
I don't
not
think,
quite like Avalon.
You make a good point.
But I get what you're saying.
Meaning, it's more of a touristy club, but the respectable artists do go through the club. It's
Okay.
So.
Right, yeah, because Avalon, like, it brings in like a good assortment. Side note, speaking of, so Avalon is kind of hit and miss these days, but I think fundamentally it's a really nice venue. It has an amazing sound system.
Right.
They're like visual setup, but it's more like the experience has kind of declined over the years. The crowd can be kind of like hit and miss. So like friend of mine, who's on the show, shout out Baz. He put out some posts on Facebook. He's like, who wants to help me buy the Avalon? I'm like, why? He's like, cause it's actually a really cool venue, but it's like being mismanaged and like the parties suck. So I was saying, oh, you should launch a DAO, like a crypto thing, and buy the Avalon using crypto. So if anyone wants to help make that happen, hit up Baz episode 2, shout out. So Amsterdam, have you been to Awakenings?
I've not been to Awakenings. Okay. I've been to a festival that was in Rotterdam a few years back. Okay. And I'd say, yeah, it's just also a good scene is just techno in Amsterdam.
I'm thinking about, actually my younger brother and I are thinking about doing ADE in October, which seems cool. Although like from the research I've looked into, it's not like a festival in like the EDC or Coachella sense, in the sense that like it's on a dedicated kind of plot of land, right?
Yeah.
I think it's more kind of like Winter Music Conference vibes where it's just a ton of parties happening. I mean, I don't know. What have you heard?
I think so. I think I've seen it compared kind of like to BPM Festival, where you'd have to like buy tickets to like a different which party you want to go to.
Oh, is BPM like that as well?
Okay. I think it was when it was still at Playa del Carmen, I think.
Oh, really?
That's the impression I had.
Okay. So not only were you at risk of getting gunned down by the cartel, but you also had to buy tickets to multiple parties. Sounds great. Sounds great. Sorry for the shade. But yeah, like I that's what I heard AD is like, but seems cool. It seems like it has more underground cred. I mean, maybe that's my perception just from like the branding, where it's like, oh, this looks like the kind of, festival that RA would promote versus like they don't promote the Insomniac.
Yeah.
The one that I saw that's new for this year is Circle. You know, like the YouTube channel that does all like the beautiful drone videos of people DJing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Solomon DJing at a castle in the Loire Valley or whatever. I heard that they're doing a festival in France this year. It's like a 3-day thing, which also seems promising, but I've already been to France, so. So, like what's kind of next for you, man, in terms of like, what is your vision for where Realize goes as an artist?
So I'd say in the last few years, I've kind of been struggling with finding my sound, and part of it was how does Realize fit into the house and techno scene? And lately, I've kind of had this epiphany where maybe I don't fit like exactly into the scene with the style of music that I make, but I can veer in my own direction. I look towards like Gesaffelstein, and how he made like a kind of dark, sexy house techno sort of music that I haven't really heard anything like. So I'm trying to just stick to my guns and do that. I'm incorporating like synths into like hardware into my music, and the goal is to create a live set. So have something that is entirely my music, maybe like a 60-90 minute set where I can tweak all the hardware and incorporate maybe like vocals or something kind of interesting into the set.
Live sets are always super cool. And then in terms of, you mentioned Gesaffelstein, and for me that would raise the question of, do you ever kind of ask yourself, how commercial, if you need to make your music more commercial in order to have more kind of viability? Because when I think of Gesaffelstein, it does have that techno vibe, right? But it's also very, very poppy at the same time. So is that like, you as an artist, do you ever find yourself like, okay, I'm going to make a concerted decision to include a little more pop elements, or I'm decidedly 100% underground? Like, do you make that kind of negotiation with yourself?
That's something I'm exploring now, is that I have finished some tracks, and when I listen back to them, I think, this is almost a little too heady. It's not quite on the dancey side. So I'm looking to explore, maybe when I put out music, like 2 of the tracks will be dancey and 1 will be a little more of a cerebral, listened on headphones experience. And I am open to like I guess compromising, to expand like potential audience is just be in the direction of incorporating some of that more accessible elements into the music.
Yeah, because even like for me as a DJ, right, and I'm not even putting in a lot of effort, if any, to gig out and stuff, but just in terms of like I'm at home figuring out what my sound would be like theoretically, I think because I'm not really focused on commercial viability, I like have dug my heels in 100% on just sort of like esoteric, cerebral and psychedelic. But I wonder to myself like, okay, well, if the goal was to actually be more, commercial or to kind of be out there, would I be willing to make maybe not a compromise, but would I strive for a little more kind of commercialism in my sound? And I don't know. I haven't had to, since I'm not doing it, right? I haven't had to make that decision or that negotiation. But I feel like it sounds like you have, and you've had to think about it, which is an interesting question. Although it sounds like, with like the rise of like 6 a.m. and stuff, it's maybe easier to just kind of like find your own sound in the underground without having to worry about it. But I guess it depends like what the goals are, right? Like in your wildest dreams, like would you see yourself kind of rising to that level of Gesaffelstein, like playing at the Palladium and stuff? Or, because some people I talk to, they're just like, no, if I could just be like a local guy, a well-known local guy like Theo or like Anton Tomas or something, I would be like totally satisfied, as a DJ. Like where do you see kind of like your goal post landing on that?
I'd say probably somewhere in the middle. Like I don't want to stick solely to local.
Okay.
But I also don't like have like the goals of filling large venues like Palladium or the Shrine, somewhere like that, to where I can, go to different countries, experience them and what the scene is like there and see how I fit and more like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I remember like in my earlier days, like in college and stuff, like I seriously was like, I want to make a try at, becoming a touring DJ. And that all sort of fell to the wayside with, financial considerations and career and stuff. But, as a much kind of more established adult now, like, I don't know that I would ever be able to handle kind of the touring life in terms of like, you constantly have underslept. You're solo for so much of it. And if, the whole like taxation on your mental health and all of that, it seems like a lot for me. Do you feel like that's something that you would be equipped for?
I don't think I have enough experience to make the call, but I'm willing to take the risk to put myself out there. And if it comes to, and I'll try and weather through it. And if I can't, then, maybe find like a country or some area I can live in where there's not too much travel. Like I think I heard Steve Rushmod lives in Amsterdam and only DJs like in the Netherlands. And so I think there's like happy mediums there to be found.
Yeah. Like Sasha, obviously he's like a touring machine, right? Like both he and Digweed. But I think I read that recently in the last few years, he's been living in Ibiza, which makes it easy for him to do like pan-European touring, short flights on the weekend, right? So he can live in Ibiza like Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, short flights to wherever, and then be back home. I mean, that sounds like super ideal, but that's Sasha. Like, and to get to that point, you have to grind for years and years. I mean, the dude's been doing it for like 30. So I don't know, and then you ever watch that series on Resident Advisor's YouTube channel? It's like Behind the Music or Behind the Tour or something, where they follow a bunch of like pretty big DJs as they tour around.
I haven't seen that one.
It's a really good one with Nina Kravitz, and I may have mentioned it on here before. She talks about kind of the dynamics of touring, how you're solo a lot of the times, how it's this strange kind of dichotomy where you're DJing at night and, it feels like people are worshiping you and you're like buzzing off of this high of like playing for a crowd. And then how sort of like sad and anticlimactic it feels when you got to go back to your hotel room afterwards.
Right.
And it's just you by yourself, traveling, like your business. You're like, I mean, it's more glamorous, but it's like back in the day, you know, they used to have like the traveling salesman that would like travel by themselves from town to town trying to like sell shit door to door.
Yeah.
And you know, like I think like there's a play about Death of a Salesman, right? Right. Like, doesn't he kill himself because like so sad and shit?
Yeah.
So it's like DJ life is almost the same, except there is like this very high, right? Because you're playing for people.
Exactly.
But then at the end of the day, it is very so. And she had this very poetic way of putting it in the thing where she's like, you know, I had to come to terms with the fact that like all of these moments are just made for me to enjoy by myself. It's like, oh, but I, you know, felt like a very like poignant point. So it's, you know, you don't feel like, I don't feel like DJs talk about that a lot, right? It's always just like, oh, touring, fun.
The way you like kind of painted the picture, it's kind of like a drug. Like you can't take it all the time without,
yes,
you know,
it's true. Yeah.
taking breaks.
That's also a poignant insight. Well, I hope, man, that you are eventually able to kind of, you know, we were talking off camera about kind of a transition in your personal career, and I hope that facilitates a way for you to grow further in your musical career as well.
Thank you.
So I guess with that, you know, we're kind of coming up on time here. You know, what would you like to promote and plug for our audience here, our growing audience?
Okay. I'll say I have an EP coming out in a couple of weeks.
Sick.
So
is that what you sent me?
That's
like,
one I sent you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a preview of it, folks, and it's pretty good.
So if the way Nick described it earlier in the episode, you know, heady techno with, you know, elements of progressive to it with the slow burn, if that interests you, just find it on Spotify in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm a music nerd, a music dweeb, introverted music dweeb. A lot of my audience are introverted music dweebs. So I think you're gonna find an audience here with my people.
Thank you. And otherwise, I just say, you know, like advice to throw out there is like, life is short. If there's something that you want to do, like go after it and. Find what you want and chase and put your.
I will second that. Live with intention and be a conscious creator. Well, thank you, man. This has been great. You know, I love it when, you know, I can feel that I'm like speaking to a like kindred spirit. You know, of which there have been many that have come through here, but it's always like a pleasure when I know that you know, that you and I would vibe musically. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at DecoyNick. You can follow Side Note at Side Note Media. The YouTube channel is Side Note. And so like due to the algorithm, you might have trouble finding me on YouTube. So just go through my link tree on Instagram or like type in Side Note and DJ, or for this week, type in Side Note Realize. Eventually we're gonna take over the algorithm. It's gonna figure us out, but for the time being, we'll live with the workarounds. Awesome, folks. Thank you, and until next time.